Maldives President Mohamed Muizzu has issued a reconciliatory tone after his anti-India rhetoric and said that India will continue to remain the Maldives' closest ally. As of end of last year, Maldives owes approximately $400.9 million to India. The comments have come right after the first batch of Indian personnel have left the island nation as was initially planned. The president had earlier demanded that all 88 military personnel manning the Indian aviation platforms should leave the country. This statement had created a lot of uproar as India provides humanitarian and medical evacuation services to the people of Maldives with 2 helicopters and a Dornier aircraft. Bhashwati Mukherjee, former diplomat, is joining us live. We also have Sharat Kohli, senior economist, live with us. Yuvraj Pokharna, columnist, joins us live. Adit Kothari, international affairs expert, also is live with us on the program. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Mukherjee, on what you make of this sudden change in tone of Mohamed Muizzu.
Well, perhaps he has some good economists, like we have an outstanding one here, Dr. Kohli, who has informed him that his country is too heavily in debt to continue to be so discourteous and nasty to what he now calls as the country's closest ally. Well, all I can say is that he has strange ways of treating his closest allies. I do hope that some sense has dawned on him that in fact not only are we their closest ally, we are also their greatest well-wisher. We have contributed to the development of Maldives. We have funded their development cooperation program. We send a huge number of tourists to Maldives. And the manner in which this new head of state has behaved with us, has questioned our presence as if we are trying to colonize Maldives, has run roughshod over our sentiments, and has sent our military personnel back, means that we should actually respond to him very slowly, very carefully, and make him understand that it cannot be business as usual. If we are his closest ally, then he must learn how to behave as normal countries do with their closest ally. But my own feeling is that the Maldivian economy is in deep trouble, and maybe he's finally realized that getting into a Chinese debt trap is not the best way for Maldives to retain its sovereignty, since he keeps talking about Maldivian sovereignty and how Maldives can look after itself, and how Maldives is actually not a small country but a large country with many islands. So then maybe he should perhaps think hard as to which is the country that can help Maldives maintain its sovereignty. Which close ally is best situated and positioned to do that? Maybe that's what he needs to think about, Uday.
Sharat Kohli, is it simply economics? Is it simply the outstanding debt amount that Maldives owes to India, which has suddenly led to this conciliatory tone? What is your interpretation of these latest comments?
Well, thank you so much, and good afternoon to the NewsX viewers and to my fellow panelists. Well, of course, as Ambassador Mukherjee, very kind of her to be saying those words for me, which I do not deserve. I'm a very ordinary economist. I only speak and get inspired by what you speak. So, there is a very old song in Hindi. I remember, Uday. Sab kuch luta ke hosh mein aaye to kya kiya. Very old Hindi song, and it reminds me. After having said all that nonsense, after having asked the Indian troops to be evacuated, which he still stands by, now he wants to take an about turn. So I think India is a very magnanimous country. I mean, Indian government, Indian diplomatic policies, I think Ambassador would agree with me, are very magnanimous. We do, somebody who does a mistake and wants to come back and repent. We have a big heart. We can still consider, and I'm sure India will at some point of time. But here the problem is more economic. The tourists have disappeared. I am told by one of my, known people who runs a hotel in Maldives. He told me our bookings are knocked down by more than 50% because he used to basically host Indians. So more than 50%. He stopped short of saying it will come down to probably 5 or 10%. He said probably drop more than 50%. The $400 million loan or debt which stands on Maldives and which India is pressing, I mean, the repayment is due. I mean, the repayment is scheduled. And every year you have to square up a certain amount, which they don't have the money now because they've run out of foreign exchange. So I think they are learning the hard way that how being pally with China can hit you back. Because China this also proves, Uday, a very important point, which I'm sure Ambassador would endorse, that China is not an all-weather friend. China is very vested. China is very selfish. And China is very, very focused on fulfilling its own interest. I mean, I'm just translating my words to a bit of an explanation so that the viewers understand where I'm coming from. So I think so China must have shown what is happening behind the scenes, that China must have shown its colors in some form or the other to President Muizzu, some form or the other. Whereas it was very badly invited, he went there like a state guest, but I don't know what kind of treatment he got, what kind of favors he got. Apparently, what he got was very little. And all he got was that we want a military base in your territory to counter India, throw them out of your country so that we can be there. For the rest, we'll give you some money here and there. For the rest, mind your own business. I think that seems to be a very clear message as far as China is concerned. This is what has led to change of heart. That is, losing out on the top of the list is losing out economically. The tourists are gone. He has to repay the debt. He doesn't have money to repay. The economy is in trouble. It's a machhar economy. I'm sorry to say that, Uday. I mean, the economy has got no standing as far as India is concerned. We are not even bothered. Who's Maldives? We don't even care. But India is very compassionate to its neighbors. And as I said in the beginning, India has got a very magnanimous approach. India has got a big heart. I'm sure the Prime Minister Modi and his team will still embrace President Muizzu in some way or the other. Things may not be back to the same. I mean, you cannot expect the earlier relations now. Jude to gaant pad jaye. Toote se phir na jude to gaant pad jaye. Once you have behaved in that manner, I'm sure things will never be back to the same. But at a diplomatic level, you can never stretch things to the extreme. I'm not a diplomatic expert, but you never go to an extreme. You always try and find a solution which is apparently to the rest of the world, it looks very, very decent, very, very normal, and very, very acceptable. So I think something of the sort is going to happen. I'm not sure if India is going to relax these debt repayment terms now, because the troops are already under evacuation and there is a deadline and the troops are on their way to come back. So I think this will be a big scar. India has funded their projects. India has given them helicopters. India has given them aircrafts. There are Indians working in their hotels, there are Indians working in their entire economy. So I think he realized that without India, either China takes the place, which China refused to. We are nothing. So I think that is where the thought process is coming from, Uday. I'm not a diplomatic expert, but economically, I see a very strong point there.
Okay, let me take that across to Yuvraj Pokharna as well. Yuvraj, as far as these comments are concerned, and the terminology, Maldives' closest ally, is that something we can believe, given the cozying up that, Maldives has done with China, particularly since Muizzu took charge?
Namaste to Uday and everyone in the panel. To me, if you ask me, Mohamed Muizzu is to Maldives is as good as Arvind Kejriwal is to Bharat. I'll tell you how in a couple of seconds. As they say in Hindi colloquial, roti, kapda, makan, pani. So we provide Maldives with rice, spices, fruits, vegetables, medicines. We provide them drinking water when they do not have a shade of water to drink. We provide them clothing. We even provide them, trust me, we even provide them with cement, rock and rock boulders so that they can build infrastructure. And what do we get in return? The social media controversy that snowballed into the extermination of 3 ministers is the tip of the iceberg. Just imagine the level of audacity, the lament that they have against Indians. And that is nothing but, I feel that it is nothing but the handiwork of China and the all-weather friendship that Mr. Muizzu is now touting about. I'll give you a couple of recent examples. As recent as 2023 December, Mr. Muizzu terminated the hydrography survey 2019 agreement that they had with India. And what they highlighted is the national security. What is that? And they have completely took a departure from the India First policy. That is one. Second, as recent as March 5, 2024, a couple of weeks ago, I'm quoting him verbatim, no Indian personnel, not even those in civilian clothing, would be present inside my country, unquote. This is what he said. So are we fool enough to trust him? It is nothing but he's turning to be a pauper. And as they say, beggars cannot be choosers. So they don't have any choice but to beg. Sorry for such harsh words, but this is the truth. Over to you there.
Adit Kothari, come in here on on Muizzu's changed tones. Is this just a face saver? Is this something he's saying to perhaps seek a debt waiver? What explains this?
So I think it was effectively, his noviceness, his diplomatic stupidity, as one would call it, because he essentially ran his whole campaign on an India out program, and where he wanted to cozy up with the Chinese, not realizing how the Chinese essentially work. And he probably must have experienced something on his visit during on his first presidential visit to China. And as a consequence, must have essentially come across certain workings which he is not happy with, and which is what would essentially explain his recalibrated position on India. But there is, as Dr. Kohli also mentioned, that there is a grand level of trust deficit between India and Maldives now, and we as Indians will probably overlook this. Of the conduct of President Muizzu and his sycophant parliamentarians. But the point is that even if India was to come to aid the Maldivians, it must come at a cost of some sort of reciprocity. So India must protect its interest in Maldives. We have to be pragmatic about it, and we have to ensure that the Chinese actually don't get access to those waters, and they are not essentially situated in such close proximity to India, which is about 70 odd nautical miles to Minicoy Islands, is I'm led to believe. Extreme conditions is what we should be putting down. We should be working with a bit like the Chinese style, where we should be offering high interest loans, and there should be some amount of reciprocity that should be should go out as a punishment, as a consequence of absolute diplomatic failures. I mean, if you look at the past history, India's always stood up as a true ally to Maldives. Be it during the 1988 coup, where Operation Cactus was essentially led by the Indian armed forces and the Indian military to essentially ensure that the president was safe. 19 mercenaries were killed as a consequence. Out of the 26 atolls that Maldives has, only 2 were essentially monitored with coastal radars. India essentially helped set up, coastal radars on almost all of them. To fend off any pirates and any sort of other coastal threats. So India's always stood up to Maldives in all perspectives. Whether it be COVID, whether it be water crisis, whether it be setting up the biggest hospital in Maldives. They just have to take cognizance of it and realize that India truly means and truly has the interest of Maldives at heart, and we are not playing the games as other superpowers are essentially trying to play. Udayji.
Yes. Also, as far as though these words are concerned, do we expect any sort of follow-up in action, Ambassador Mukherjee, or is this just lip service? And also now, more importantly, how should India respond to these comments?
Oh, it's very simple. As Dr. Kohli said, it's debt reservicing. They have to pay back a certain amount, and they are bankrupt because the manner in which they insulted our country. Indians have decided, for the moment, not to go to Maldives as tourists. They are looking at other destinations. So the point here is twofold. First of all, as a major emerging country with a huge ocean to safeguard, we should now seriously start looking for leasing an island on the Indian Ocean to build as a military base, as other big powers do, so that we can safeguard our legitimate interests in the ocean, because the Chinese Navy is becoming very aggressive. It has already threatened its neighbors. The time will come where there could be a confrontation in the Indian Ocean near our coastal waters. We have to be ready for that. Given the way the Maldives has behaved, it cannot be a reliable partner. Let us say that tomorrow he is replaced by a president friendly to us. And after 3 years, he is again replaced by a president unfriendly to us. A country cannot safeguard its long-term national interests in such an erratic way. So we have to look for some other solution. As far as Maldives is concerned, I would agree with Udit that we have long-term interests in Maldives. This president has won by a very small margin. There is a very large number of Maldivians who do not at all approve of what he is doing to the Maldivian-India relationship. But at the same time, in order to put pressure on him, we should insist on repayment. We should behave with the Maldives for the moment exactly the way the Chinese behaved with the Pakistanis. They did not give debt relief when Pakistan was in a really difficult situation. For a long time, they held off, and they got many concessions in return. So I think we should do the same, and we should use this position. After all, we are the land from where Chanakya was born, to squeeze concessions out of him. That's the way business is done in foreign policy, Uday. It is completely Machiavellian. You look at your own national interests, and that's all that matters. If I was in charge of the division handling Maldives, that is the suggestion I would give the foreign minister and prime minister. We utilize this position to squeeze concessions out of Maldives exactly in the way that they humiliated us and threw our armed personnel out of Maldives. And at the same time, we look around and lease an island, buy an island, get it on a 99-year lease to safeguard our legitimate national security interests in the Indian Ocean. That is what we have to do. It's a twofold strategy, would be my suggestion.
Do you believe that would be a fitting response? Sharad Kohli, what is your take on how we should respond to these words? And do you believe this conciliation will continue?
Well, as I said earlier, knowing how Prime Minister Modi and his team, our External Affairs Minister, we are very forthright. We are very, very particular about what we need. We are very clear. We are very focused. It's quite unlike what used to be before. Where Sahab hum khade hue aapke aage haath jod ke. It's that approach is not there anymore. We are very, very clear in what we expect. So I think I completely agree with Ambassador Mukherjee that we should lay down the conditions. Now, since you come around, let's lay down the conditions. I mean, I would also say that he has to tender an unconditional apology for what he has done earlier. Even he has to own up his ministers' remarks. I mean, we don't even know the names of those ministers. Who are those ministers? We care a damn about it. He has to own up. There has to be an unconditional apology which should be tendered before the international community, because it brought a bit of a embarrassment in front of the whole international community. It's not just about India. So I think there should be an unconditional apology. And we should also, I have another point to make here. We should also be careful of the fact if there is any other game being played behind the curtains, that heads I win, tails you lose, that there is some pact with China that quietly make them agree. And then, we will also continue with our agenda. At the same time, you engage with India so that, the Indians keep extending favors to you. You have access to India. India has access to you. And China, this could be a plan of China as well. So I think that needs to be investigated as well. And that needs to be very clear. If there are any hidden intentions behind this change of heart and change of mind, I would like to know, is this a change of heart or a change of mind? If it's a change of heart, I'm fine. But if it's a change of mind, there could be a China mind behind this. That's my concern, Uday. And I think conditions should be laid out, and we should expect an unconditional written apology at the United Nations or before the international community. Uday.
All right. Adit Kothari, perhaps that would be a fitting response currently. And do you believe that this conciliation is short-lived, or is Muizzu actually having a change of heart?
I tend to agree with Dr. Kohli on this one. Whether change of heart or change of mind can be, it could prove extremely detrimental to India's interests. So I think India will also need to calibrate very carefully on how it essentially deals with the situation, because like you mentioned, heads I win, tails you lose. It can be a scary situation where India will be tested in this particular atmosphere as to how India reacts to President Muizzu's request to service this particular debt. If India rejects, then what are the options available at hand for President Muizzu. Does he go back to China? Does China step in and take control of certain islands like Ambassador Mukherjee was essentially talking about? So, those are some of the things which India will have to essentially mull over. But like I said, I mean, given the kind of proximity that India and Maldives share, in terms of distance, in terms of culture, in terms of traditions, in terms of people-to-people ties, it's going to be very hard for any administration to overlook that. This is a temporary glitch, a diplomatic glitch, which I'm sure we will overcome. Just like, I'm going to draw parallels like how India overcame the diplomatic situation between India and Malaysia, for example. Mohamed Mahathir was proving to be very difficult. India played a hard game of economic boycott, and ultimately the Malaysians had to come around. So I think the boycott Maldives campaign has definitely yielded some benefits where they've been cash strapped from a foreign dollars flowing into the country, and that has reaped some benefit from a geopolitical perspective. And I think we should continue with that particular aspect, build our own tourism in that particular region, but also look at the option of leasing one of the islands from Maldives for 99 years, and build our capabilities to ensure that our interests in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean are essentially protected. Udayji, thank you.
All right, let me quickly go across to Yuvraj Pokharna now for a closing comment on the way forward for India, and where do you see this situation between India and the Maldives headed, the relationship?
Uday, I mean, what the esteemed and august panel said, I agree with most of the things, but with a slight difference. It is not about Maldives tendering us an unconditional apology. It is not about caressing the ego of India. We are way past than that. And let us be very pragmatic. Let us be business-minded. You show us what you have on the table, and we'll consider your offer. That is more than I can give, and nothing less, nothing more. This is it. Let us be very pragmatic, like a Gujarati businessman.
Ambassador Mukherjee, a last word to you.
Well, I don't know if only Gujarati businessmen are pragmatic. I think we should all be pragmatic. But I agree with you that...
On a lighter note, ma'am.
I agree with you that Bengalis are not pragmatic. We should be pragmatic. We should handle it in a pragmatic manner. And we should handle it in a manner in which we convey the message that insulting us in this manner, insulting the entire nation, it cannot just, afterwards, we cannot just revert to business as usual. As Dr. Kohli said, the foreign policy of India has undergone a fundamental shift. We have to make it clear that for it to be business, even half as usual, he has to tender that apology. He has to make it clear that he cannot insult India's sovereignty or call India names in public, and he has to enter into some kind of arrangement with us to repay the debt. At the same time, if he wishes for Indian development cooperation assistance, he has to behave with us in a manner which is based on sovereign equality, and only then would be in a position to do business with him. I don't think there is any other way to respond, in my perspective, if we are a self-respecting nation, which we are, and it also sends a message to other countries who may otherwise think that they can do whatever they like, walk all over us and get away with it. We will not accept it anymore. This India is a different India. India has changed fundamentally, and we have to behave in that way, the new India that we represent, all of us here on the panel today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.